All right, so let's now move into our interval notation. So we know how to graph it. Let's do interval notation. So when it comes to our inequalities, we automatically know like the symbols for these, hopefully. We know less than and greater than symbols. Whenever that happened on a graph, on a number line, we knew we had open circles there. Now, when it comes to our interval notation, we're going to do a thing that's called parentheses. So interval notation is less than inequalities is a less than or greater than sign. Let's put a comma right here. Now, when we said that on a number line, we had an open circle, and then from an open circle, we do interval notation. All right, so for all my word people, the words just popped up there for you. See it? So again, less than or greater than, we had an open circle, and then when it comes to interval notation, we're using parentheses. Let me put a comma right there. All right, now when it comes to our other part was less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. That gave us an open circle, a closed circle, closed circle. And then we use brackets for this part. Now, depending on which part that we're dealing with, whether it's the front or the back, if it's the front, we're going to do the open parentheses or the open bracket. So we're talking about open when we're talking about this way or this way. So if you're opening if it's the first number, use one of those. If it's the second number, the one on the back side, use the closed one. So this is the one that's closing it up. Making it nice and neat, closing those things up. So depending on which number you're dealing with or where the number is, if it's in front, you use the front one. If it's on the back, you use the back one. That way you can close it out. So let's make sure we have the words up here too, and then we're going to go from there. Bam, there's the words. So again, if it's less than or greater than, we had to open circle, and then on the graphing, parentheses and interval notation, less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we have closed circles and we use brackets. So let's move into now our example where we talk about all this stuff. So let's go. Let's cover that up. All right, so let's now talk about let's write things in interval notation. Let's put them in there. So there's two steps we're going to deal with, just real quick. First step, we're going to write things on, write the inequality on a number line, just like we just did on the last part. And then the second thing is we're going to write the interval notation for the shaded part or the shaded region. So we're going to write the interval notation just for that shaded part. So if you need to stop this and write that down real quick, stop it and write it down, and then keep moving forward. So let's move on to our first two, A and B. So A is just like the normal one we did earlier. So we're going to graph this out using our number line. So we're going to graph it out. We said we put one in the middle. We have an open circle right here because it's just a less than sign. And then we shade the way it's going. So we can do an arrow going that direction. So it means we're shading this way. Going that way. Right, just in case anybody's like confused about the arrow, what I mean with the arrow. This is what I mean. Arrow's pointing that way. So we shade that way. Put our infinities on here. All right. Now our next one is called a between. I'm going to write that word up here. Between. And why is it called a between? Because X is between two numbers. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. Woo. All right, so X is between these two. A between. All right, so with that means we're going to shade between the two numbers. All right, so we're going to do that. So with this part here, we're going to shade between these two numbers. So on a number line, we're going to put -5 here. We're going to put 2 here. We have an open circle right here on -5. That's a less than or equal to, so that's a closed circle on 2. And we said we're going to shade between the two. Oh, shade between, between. Oh, ho, ho. All right, so we did shade between those two numbers. Oh my gosh, that was so easy. Again, don't forget your infinities. All right, and the great thing about a video, guys, is if I went through that real fast, too fast for you, then you can go back and rewatch it one more time because it's not long. So if we have two numbers again, we shade between them. If it's just one number, then we shade to one side or to the other side, depending on where the arrow's pointing. All right. So now we shaded them. That was step one. Bam, done. Now step two says we're going to write the interval notation for the shaded region. Now before we write an interval notation, it's going to be important to know the difference between x and y, because x we know is the x-axis. So for our x values, we're going to write an interval notation going from left to right. And if you remember on step two at top, it says we're going to do an interval notation of the shaded region, only the part that's shaded. So we're going to go from left to right for that shaded part. So if we take a look at our first one here, going from left to right on A, on the left side is over here on this side, because it's going on forever and ever and ever. We're shaded. That means we're starting with negative infinity. So on the left side is negative infinity. We're going to come all the way across here to where it stops, and that's at 1. So again, we're going from left to right, like you're reading a book. You go from left side to the right side, left side to the right side. Reading Beowulf, or you're reading any of those things you're doing for English. You go from left to right, left to right. So same thing happens when it comes to math. Go from left to right. All right, now for the other one, we're going to put the brackets and parentheses on it very shortly. I will do that. Now for the next one, we're going to go for B, we're going to go from left to right again, where the shaded region starts and where it stops. So it starts at -5, and it stops at 2. And we're like, okay, cool, that's not bad, so we can do this, we can understand this. Now with it, we know for this first one here for A, we have a parenthesis going on right here, because it's an open circle, that 1. So with it, 1 is on the back side. So we got to close everything off with it, right? So when it comes to our parenthesis for 1, we could do a closing parenthesis. We have to close it off. Now the other thing, when it comes to infinities, infinity is always going to have a parenthesis. So no matter whether it's positive or negative, it's always going to have a parenthesis there. So here we have a negative infinity. We're going to do a parenthesis, but it's at the beginning, so we have to open it up, right? So we got to do an open parenthesis. That 1 there, that opens up the whole thing. And when we're saying open it up, that means like where we started. So the open parenthesis, close parenthesis type thing, we open it, we close it. Okay. If it doesn't make sense, just like let me know. Like, Mr. Hall, I don't understand that. What are you talking about? But we open and we close it. So now the next one, let's look at this one. So we know with -5, that's an open circle, so we have a parenthesis again. For 2, we have a closed circle, which means a bracket. So just because it has parentheses at the beginning doesn't mean it has to have a parenthesis on the end. Or just because it has a bracket on the beginning doesn't mean it has to have a bracket on the end. It could be 2 separate ones. So in this case, you can see it's 2 separate ones. So we're going to have an open parenthesis for -5 because that's where it starts. Do an open one there. And the next one, we have a bracket, and it's going to close it off, right? Right. So we're going to do a closed bracket right there. So do parenthesis on the -5, bracket on the 2, but it opens on the -5, so we use that one. Closed on the 2. All right, so let's keep moving. Last part. All right, so now we did the x's. Now we deal with our y's. The y values. Now remember again, y is talking about the y-axis. That's going up and down, or down and up. So when it comes to our interval notation here, when we write our interval notation, we're going to go write the interval notation from the bottom to the top. So for x, we went from left to right, reading a book. When it comes to interval for y's, we're going to go from the bottom of the graph to the top of the graph, from bottom to top. You're going to see that come back up a bunch of times soon, very shortly. So let's go and graph these out first. Got -4 right there. Got positive infinity, negative infinity down here. Again, y is on the left side, so we can make an arrow. So it means we're going to shade it that direction. The numbers that are bigger than -4. Bigger than. So it means we're going to have a parenthesis right here. And then we're going to shade this direction. Because all the numbers that are bigger than -4. Okay, we're good. All right, then for D, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to put 0 here. We're going to put 6 here. And it's a between, because this one is between y. Y is between 2 numbers. So we're going to shade between again. So on the 0, we have a closed circle because that's equal to. 6 has an open circle. We shade between. We shade that. All right, so with that, when we shade it, now we have our print infinities. All right, so we said we're going to go from the bottom to the top when it comes to interval notations. So just so people realize, you make sure you don't forget, guys, we're still writing this horizontally. So don't be like, oh, we got to write it vertically going up this way. We're going to write it horizontal like normal. So first off, we know we have a bracket right here for -4 because it's a closed circle. We're going to go from bottom to the top. So the bottom of the graph up to the top. And we're going to start with the lowest number and go up. So here our lowest number is -4. Then as we go up here, we go to infinity. So from -4 to infinity is where we're going to shade for our domain. That's our shaded region here. Now on -4, it starts it. So we have to have our bracket right there. For our infinity, remember, always gets a parenthesis. Put a parenthesis right there. And that's our interval notation for our y value. All right, for this next one here, close circles again, open circles again here. Remember, going from the bottom to the top. So the bottom portion is 0. The top portion is 6. It opens with the bracket. It closes with the parenthesis. And guys, that's interval notation. That's all. Woo! That's all we got to do. So good job with that. So let's now move into our notes for this. I said notes, but I meant our practice, our what we got to do for work. Let's go.